Hello, I'm going to be sharing some more poetry today. I'm going to be sharing from this book called American Poetry, which is a collection of poems by a variety of American poets. I've selected 4 of the poems to share, and they're all written in the 1800s. The first one is by a poet named Walt Whitman, who lived from 1819 to 1892, and he was a very well-known poet. This is a poem he wrote about how he viewed America and all the various people in America coming together. Now, he mentions a bunch of different people in America. Some of them might sound a little bit different because you have to remember it's written in the 1800s, so jobs he's talking about wouldn't necessarily be the same as they are today. But this is how he viewed America, and it's called I Hear America Singing. I hear America singing, the varied carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be blithe and strong, the carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or beam, the mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work, the boatman singing what belongs to him in his boat, the deckhand singing on the steamboat deck, the shoemaker singing as he sits on his bench, the hatter singing as he stands, the woodcutter's song, the plowboy's on his way in the morning or at noon intermission or at sundown, the delicious singing of the mother or of the young wife at work or of a girl sewing or washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else, the day what belongs to the day, at night the party of young fellows, robust, friendly, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. The next poem I'm going to share is by a man named Ralph Waldo Emerson, he lived from 1803 to 1882, and he was well known actually for a bunch of essays that he wrote, but he also wrote poetry. And he lived in Concord, Massachusetts, which is north of Boston, and the first real battle of the American Revolution was at both Lexington and Concord, and he wrote in 1836, he wrote this poem when they were dedicating a monument to the people who had fought at Concord, and it's called Concord Hymn. By the rude bridge that arched the flood, their flag to April's breeze unfurled, here once the embattled farmers stood, and fired the shot, heard round the world. The foe long since in silence slept, alike the conqueror silent sleeps, and time the ruined bridge was swept, down the dark stream which seaward creeps. On this green bank, by this soft stream, we set today a votive stone, that memory may their deed redeem, when, like our sires, our sons are gone. Spirit that made these heroes dare to die and leave their children free, bid time and nature gently spare the shaft we raised to them and thee. Then the next poem I'm going to share is by a woman named Emma Lazarus, she lived from 1849 to 1887. And this is actually a poem that she wrote about the Statue of Liberty. Okay, there was a famous Greek statue called the Colossus of Rhodes, which is actually considered one of the 7 wonders of the world. And that's what she's referring to when she talks about the Colossus and the giant. And she wrote about her vision for what the Statue of Liberty should be. So it's called The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here, at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities fame. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. And then the last poem I'm going to share with you is a poem about baseball. There was a man named Ernest Thayer, he lived from 1863 to 1940, but this poem was actually written in 1888. He worked as a humor columnist for a newspaper in San Francisco, and this is a poem he came up with about a baseball player, and probably people have heard at least parts of it. It's called Casey at the Bat. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville 9 that day. The score stood 4-2, with but one more inning to play. And then, when Cooney died at first, and Barrows did the same, a sickly silence fell upon the patrons of the game. A struggling few got up to go in deep despair. The rest clung to that hope which springs eternal in the human breast. They thought if only Casey could but get a whack at that, we'd put up even money now with Casey at the bat. But Flynn preceded Casey, as did also Jimmy Blake, and the former was a Lulu, and the latter was a cake. So upon that stricken multitude grim melancholy sat, for there seemed but little chance of Casey's getting to the bat. But Flynn let drive a single, to the wonderment of all, and Blake, the much despised, tore the cover off the ball. And when the dust had lifted and men saw what had occurred, there was Johnny safe at second, and Flynn a hugging third. Then from 5,000 throats and more there rose a lusty yell. It rumbled through the valley, it rattled in the dell. It pounded on the mountain and recoiled upon the flat, for mighty Casey was advancing to the bat. There was ease in Casey's manner as he stepped into his place. There was pride in Casey's bearing, and a smile lit Casey's face. And when responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his hat, no stranger in the crowd could doubt 'twas Casey at the bat. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands with dirt. 5,000 tongues applauded when he wiped them on his shirt. Then while the writhing pitcher ground the ball into his hip, defiance gleamed in Casey's eye. A sneer curled Casey's lip. And now the leather-covered sphere came hurtling through the air, and Casey stood a-watching it in haughty grandeur there. Close by the sturdy batsman the ball unheeded sped. "That ain't my style," said Casey. "Strike one," the umpire said. From the benches black with people there went up a muffled roar, like the beating of the storm waves on a warm and distant shore. "Kill him! Kill the umpire!" shouted someone on the stand, and it's likely they'd have killed him had not Casey raised his hand. With a smile of Christian charity, great Casey's visage shone. He stilled the rising tumult. He bade the game go on. He signaled to the pitcher, and once more the spheroid flew. But Casey still ignored it, and the umpire said, "Strike two." "Fraud!" cried the maddened thousands, and the echo answered, "Fraud!" But one scornful look from Casey, and the audience was awed. They saw his face grow stern and cold, they saw his muscles strain, and they knew that Casey wouldn't let that ball go by again. The sneer is gone from Casey's lip, his teeth are clenched in hate, he pounds with cruel violence his bat upon the plate. And now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go, and now the air is shattered by the force of Casey's blow. Oh, somewhere in this favored land the sun is shining bright, the band is playing somewhere, and somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere men are laughing, and somewhere children shout, but there is no joy in Mudville. Mighty Casey has struck out. Thank you for joining me.